Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody, and greetings. Welcome to the Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel. I'm Salvador Cordova, and we're joined this evening by Rebekah of the Bread of Life
channel,
website and YouTube channel. So, Rebekah, just a few words. Anything you want to say that the Lord's laid on your heart?
Well, I love you all. God bless you, and may the Lord's presence be with you. I pray that you will feel and experience the joy of knowing Jesus today. And thank you, Sal, for having me on.
Yeah, praise the Lord. So, this is kind of a debrief, and my understanding is Rebekah on Saturday night was visiting the channel Answers in Atheism, although I've nicknamed the channel Answers in Satanism. But I'm sorry about that, guys. I have sometimes a mean sense of humor.
Well, do keep in mind, Mike watched our video the other night.
Oh, okay.
So he will probably watch whatever he'll probably hear whatever you say here. So
okay, so Mike, if you're watching, just so you know, I don't watch your channel. Although every now and then I just want to see how many subscribers you have, just so I could reassure myself that I still have more. But the one person who quietly has more subscribers than anyone I know is Rebekah. So last I checked, you have like almost 6,000 subscribers. And I wanted to say, goes to show that, someone that just has a wonderful personality and loves the Lord, it goes a long way to reach, people just want to keep visiting. And so congratulations on being able to build your channel up to that size. And it was only like since 2018. So do you want to talk just a little bit about your channel?
Well, yeah, I can do that. And I mean, I will say this, number of subscribers, isn't always the best indicator of how a channel is going. I would love to have like a larger number of loyal watchers. A lot of people don't come to my channel more than once, and a lot of people subscribe and then they don't really come back. So I think I wouldn't be overawed by the number of subscribers. What happened actually this past, like in the spring, I had a video go viral. And actually I went from 800 subscribers. Basically, the way I got to 5,000 was through that one video. And unfortunately, it was an interview, and over the summer, that person decided they didn't want the interview up anymore and asked me to take it down. So I had to say goodbye to 400,000 views. When you take a video down, all the views go. So that was kind of disappointing, but I'm just thankful that even just for the viewers that I have, I just, all I want to do is reach people with the gospel. So I'm happy that people are watching my channel, even if it's a small number.
Doki, I got to tell you something. I got a email from YouTube that I should be enabled for super stickers. Hint, hint. I don't know how that works. So I'm just putting that bug in your ear. If you've already tried to and I didn't acknowledge you, that means I'm not understanding how this all works. Like, you know, so even if you don't donate to my channel, I want to thank you for donating to like the other channels. You've been such a faithful supporter of creationist channels financially, but you've been so faithful to come to this channel. Even when it was, I had, not a lot of people, you were here. And sometimes through the summer, I had these long shows because I was going through a grieving process as, after my mom passed. And that really meant a lot to me. When I'd come, I'd see you every night or almost every night. I just wanted to say thank you. And so it's been a privilege to have been having you in the audience. And then Patrick Alexander. What does that sign say in the back of her? Atheist of the Month.
Yes, and I'll show you guys that in a sec. But I also want to say thanks to Doki because you have also been so supportive of me, always putting my channel links. Like whenever I show up on a channel, Doki always does that. So thank you so much. And yeah, this is the Atheist of the Month for my channel, Zing. A few months ago, I started interviewing atheists. I guess now it's been like 5 months. But so, and that brought a lot of atheists to my channel. And I love that because I am main purpose of my channel is evangelism. So I want to keep those atheists around. And so I just decided this month that I'm doing Atheist of the Month. So this is an atheist that has faithfully been on my live streams, chatting the whole time, often with very mean comments, but I'm just glad that he's there. So, every month I'm going to be doing kind of an Atheist of the Month to encourage them to keep coming to my channel. And now that's not going back up because I have to get up and stick it back up.
So, I'm having continued technical problems with this particular computer. If suddenly my image freezes, I'm going to go to the backup almost immediately. And sometimes the computer sort of heals itself. I think I may be at that point. I'm starting to see symptoms of a freeze here. So let me have my backup computer on standby. So you could see that in the banner there, I'm mentioning that this is a nerdy show. This isn't a full nerd show because Rebekah isn't quite the science nerd that I am, but we're trying to give her a little taste of it. And then also a lot of my subscriber base are people interested in the McLean Bible Church drama. And there's not really much to report that's breaking, but you can look at kind of the latest news, which is already maybe 2 weeks old because there hasn't been a lot of developments in the last 2 weeks on SaveMcLeanBible.org. So that's, I'd like to thank all the people that got me over 1,000 because I was threatened with jail and arrest for going to church. And that was just a nice headline. And it got a lot of, it drove a lot of traffic to this website. But we explore mostly here on this website, evidence and reasons for the Christian faith. And so a large component of that is looking at evidence of God in the construction of biology, because life looks intelligently designed and also cursed. So the difference between intelligent design and creationism, I usually say, is intelligent design is like, well, when you see a machine, you would reasonably conclude that there was a mind that put it together, because tornadoes passing through a junkyard will not build a jetliner. However, the thing of creationism is, if you're a creationist, you believe in intelligent design, but Christian creationism says that life is intelligently designed, but the world is also cursed. So you do have a lot of effects from the fall of man. So, guys, let me know if the stream here is getting a little too jumpy. I'm going to go to the backup system. So, Rebekah, explain for the audience what happened on Saturday, and tell us, you got invited, and what was it like?
Well, so, for those who aren't aware, it's the channel Answers in Atheism, and I've gone on there a few times. I got pretty torn up there one time, and I kind of felt stupid, but they were asking questions that I didn't know the answer to, so I was just kind of like, not on my best game. But I would say, so last Saturday they had me on to talk with Demeter, who is he a molecular biologist? Is that what his credentials are?
He's some sort of biologist. He's a medical researcher, so it would be in the molecular cellular realm if he's doing cancer research. So
so he and so basically it was just their attempt to convince me that evolution is true and I should accept it. And I thought it went great. I was happy with it. I thought I crushed it, Sal. Did you watch any of it yet?
I haven't watched any of it. I'm not giving the guy any more views. Sorry.
Oh, well.
But you know what? I might make an exception just for you. And I have been cold turkey of that, watching anything. But now that you said you performed well, I want to see how you did.
I think I did. I did.
But by the way, it would go on.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to say it would mean something to me if I was any help at all in getting you ready for Saturday. So
yeah, well, now it's like I can't remember everything that happened. I do think we talked about some of the stuff that we had mentioned, but I honestly didn't have that much opportunity to talk. I feel like Demeter was talking more than I was. And actually, the conversation started out much more like kind of his critique of Christianity and the Bible. So, there was some talk about that at the beginning. And then, but really, I can just share with you because I started taking notes on what he was saying. And, really, every time I talk to someone who's trying to convince me about evolution, the main point that they're trying to make is that, hey, isn't this great? All of these changes, these mutations, they add up, and eventually they, cause these, grand things within organisms. And my question is always really the same to them. And maybe I ask it in different ways, but it's like, you're telling me a mechanism that causes change that is usually neutral or negative, and, very rarely ever, allows for something positive within an organism, according to our scientific observations. So, but, where's the mechanism that actually builds new structures within organisms? And, so how does that happen? And, and where do you get the information to begin with? Because you're talking about processes that change that change already existing information, but where does the information start with? Where do you get the information? And so Demeter spent some time talking about, he gave me these three things. He said, amplification, recombination, and mutation. And so again, I just said, look, this is all working with information that's already there. You know, you're still not telling me where the information comes from. And Andrew Cumming, I saw your comment about being the atheist of the month on my channel. I would love for you to be the atheist of the month. Please come and watch my channel and chat. And I know you've been there before, and so I appreciate you. Please do come. I would love to make you the atheist of the month.
You see, Rebekah is like the most welcoming person, even after he says something like that, like this is patently false. I'd get in his face and say, prove it, bud. You know?
I am waiting.
Really, I'm just like, Andrew, I don't think you have any place to say that, because the mechanisms don't work that as claimed. And I've given you on this channel many opportunities to suggest how this would solve like eukaryotic evolution. And just saying you don't know, we're exploring it. That's not an answer. And it doesn't, that's an example where I've given you something and you can't answer it. And even as a matter of principle, it doesn't look promising. So then to be asserting that it actually works without any proof is not science. That's a faith statement. And we could then cover origin of protein families. Sorry, Rebekah, I just had to take exception to what he said, and he can say stuff like that. You can't extrapolate some of the things that might count as evidence to solve all the problems. You might find some isolated examples where the mechanism works as you claim, but there are many more that are substantially much more daunting, and you can't extrapolate it to that. So it remains to be seen at best whether it's even a theory rather than just a statement of faith, which for the most part it is. It's pseudoscience. It is, on science's pecking order, the lowest discipline. It's despised on a scientific basis. The only reason it's held up is because, well, it's kind of like a materialistic explanation, and people want to feel like they understand things. But it's just an illusion. Sorry. So now the thing is, Rebekah's here. She's so much nicer. Oh, please come to my channel. It'd be so great to see you. I'd say, bud, let's have it out, you know?
Well, can you put up Andrew Cummings' a comment about the stickleback fish pelvic spines? So Andrew says, case in point, loss of stickleback fish pelvic spines gave freshwater fish an advantage in lakes against dragonfly larvae. Well, Andrew, that may be, but where did those spines come from in the first place? Where did the fish come from? Where did, there's an incredible amount of information necessary to make a fish or even a spine. So where did that start? You have to have, you can have the loss of information on an organism, but you have to start with something. So where did it start? And even if you say, well, we can't explain the origin of life. Yeah, but even if you get the origin of life, you've still just got a single cell. How do you get all these fantastic structures within the organisms? Like, how do you make dragonflies and fish from, a single cell? We have no mechanism for that to happen. Darwinism has failed to give us a mechanism. Natural selection has to have something to select from. So, Sal, are you still with us?
Oh, yes, I'm on the backup here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
And I'd like to thank the audience for bearing with my technical problems while my computer mysteriously resets. And so I'm going to give you just a pointer here. Mm-hmm. This is the same maneuver that they'll pull on you. So this is just a thought. Anytime you say that there's no examples, they'll ding you. They will find some examples where it looks promising, and it's just fair
Yeah.
to grant that. So you'll say,
Didn't I say most mutations are negative or neutral? I don't think
that's
I
correct.
said
That's
all.
good. That's good.
So I don't think as Andrew said, wasn't that, I asked for a beneficial change? No. And in fact, I didn't say there are no beneficial changes. I think I even said there are some, but
good for you.
That isn't building a new structure within an organism. There might be a mutation that could cause a benefit for an organism, but show me how that mutation could build an entirely new organ. Show me how that mutation can build an eye. Look, and this eye example has been used over and over again, but I like it. You know why? Because if you take a camera right now, how much has gone into perfecting these little cameras on our phone, and how much human intelligence has gone into doing that? And yet still, when I take a picture with my camera, my eye is still seeing so much more than that camera is picking up. So you're telling me that my eye, which is better than this camera, came about by nothing but natural, like time and chance and mutation and natural selection. This is just unbelievable.
Yes. And Andrew Cumming, I take exception when you're saying about my chapter that was peer reviewed, that this past peer review, I'm like, my co-author had 13 PhD students, and he's a population geneticist. So, and we critiqued the absurdity of the claims of natural selection and fitness because it doesn't tie complexity as the inevitable outcome of reproductive success. So, no. See, this is another false statement. It has not been shown. Only in people's imagination it's been misrepresented.
Yeah,
because there are numerous proteins involved, and no, it's not been shown, Andrew. It's not been shown,
Andrew.
I mean, we could go through all the developmental mechanisms. So you could just keep dumping stuff like this and then criticizing my paper and saying, how did this pass peer review? The thing is, it would not pass the peer review of evolutionary biologists who are on the bottom of science's pecking order. It's garbage science, sir. Real science is physics, chemistry, not evolutionary biology. So sorry, I'm getting it sense. See, that's why it's so nice to have you on my channel, Rebekah, because you're the nicer side of things.
And Andrew Cummings says, do you want me to give you a link? Yes, sure. We'll take a link, but I can already guarantee what that link is going to be. And it's going to be storytelling. So Andrew, this is what I would like to challenge you, is to pay attention to what is actually scientific observation and what is scientific storytelling. And this is the key when you realize that all of this supposed evidence for evolution is actually just storytelling with some scientific jargon that makes it sound scientific. Then you'll be able to see the absurdity of this whole theory. This is not a theory that is well supported with scientific evidence.
It's well supported with lots of publishing and people patting themselves on the back. It's not supported by direct observation and experiment. In fact, anytime we do direct observation and experiment, it is not favorable, because the dominant mode of evolution that we see, when we can actually see it with our own eyes in real time, has been reductive or degenerative or deterioration, not construction. So it's like a casino gambler. It's like, hey, I won a little bit here, and then he loses thousands of dollars. And I've known lots of people in the casinos that way. they'll just keep playing the slot machines, and they might have maybe one, 1 hour where they made some money, and then the other 9 they're just losing. It's the net loss. And so as things deteriorate, as things, if there's net deterioration, that's the direction of evolution. It's not feasible to accumulate complexity. And we are seeing loss of complexity in the biosphere in general. We're losing lots of organisms and species, and not making as many new complex creatures to replace them. So let me see if I can get my StreamYard back on.
Andrew wants to know, and Andrew, yes, my claim is that these organs are impossible to evolve through genetic mutations. That is my claim, and no one so far has given me any answer to that, no matter what their level of expertise is, or their scientific background. No one has given me a satisfactory answer to that. And Sal, he wants to know if he can come on and explain for a few minutes. That's up to you. I'm fine with it. But I am gonna hang back my picture because I don't like my background with that white spot up there.
Okay, I'm back online. Hopefully for the rest of the show, because often what happens is just when I start the StreamYard, my primary computer just goes berserk, and then it sort of heals itself, does all the maintenance that's needed. So it's nice to be back on. So Andrew, I'm going to have to decline. As far as your criticism of my peer-reviewed chapter, you did that on creation myths. I take real exception to that, because my co-authors, one of them has 126 publications, 13 PhD students under him. You're a freshman in college, sir. And you're criticizing my co-author, who has earned his stripes in university. He's an nationally award-winning mathematician. And yes, this was very critical. This was a paper that evolutionary biologists probably wouldn't pass because they didn't like what it said, but the math doesn't lie. And we cited what evolutionists themselves, who are elite, have admitted honestly that they have a problem with the idea of fitness and its definition, which will lead to the problem of whether, as we were talking about, whether the mechanism of selection acting on mutation can actually construct anything. That paper showed there's nothing that can be proven, even despite all this kind of mythology and theatrics that they figured it out. It's not true. And so it may be that your colleagues didn't like what we had to say, but we stayed within the mainstream of evolutionists in a candid moment in peer-reviewed literature, pretty much admitting so many things. It's a terrible discipline that could have these fundamental problems, and it's still being advertised as good science. It's garbage science. I'm sorry. Real science is like things like basic as geometric optics or electromagnetic theory, or quantum chemistry. I could name any other numbers of disciplines that are real sciences, and evolutionary biology isn't one of them. Storytelling shouldn't count as experimental science. The theories don't agree with observation. And this is the same thing that we see in the abiogenesis realm. A lot of stuff is experiments being real experiments, but then they come up with just absurd conclusions what the experiment demonstrates. And it's not legitimate. I mean, if people want to keep believing that, that's up to them. So I know you're really passionate about defending it. And I mean, what can I say? There are scientific teams that work in medical research. They're trying to find cures for our diseases. They're trying to understand the human body. Many of those teams have maybe a traditional biologist, but they have lots of chemists. They'll occasionally recruit computer scientists. Some of my professors were physicists, mathematicians. You know, the least represented component of these research teams is evolutionary biologists. There's not really a lot of need for people that can just tell stories. They want people that can actually take apart cells and understand how they work. You know, writing these phylogenetic diagrams, which is in this day and age relatively easy at the molecular level. All you need to do is get a gene sequence and just throw it through a computer program. It'll build a tree for you automatically. It doesn't mean that it's right. So sorry.
Yeah. And, you know, Andrew also said it's not, you know, he said, I'll prove to you that it's not impossible. And he's saying, but that's a separate thing than plausibility, right? But Andrew, I would ask you, please do consider the plausibility of the things that you've accepted, because, I mean, you might be able to show me how it's not impossible, but can you show me that it's plausible? Can you show me you know, this is like, that's important, right? Because no matter what, you're storytelling, but like, consider whether your story is believable. I don't find evolution believable at all. It goes against all of my observations, and I'm not a scientist, but I observe the world, and I don't see things spontaneously coming into existence. I don't see things, you know, self-assembling. And, you know, you can say millions of years, whatever, but that again is storytelling. So why should I believe that this thing that is never observed is possible to happen over millions of years? I have no reason to believe that.
And I would agree. So actually, this is a great batting practice session for you, Rebekah. And I have to learn to be nicer. So it's good that you're on the show, because otherwise I'd be really losing it at this point.
Really? Wow. You've been dealing with these ideas for so long. I'm surprised it still, you know, gets you so heated.
Well, you know, Andrew criticized my co-authors, saying that in this thing past peer review, it's like, yes. Do you have a problem with that? My co-authors were probably peer reviewers. Okay. They're that senior. I mean, you don't be advisor to 13 PhD students without having the ability to review work. So
yeah.
I really did take exception to that, Andrew. I'm sorry. You know, I just wanted to say you don't have the depth that my co-authors had. One of them is population geneticist. Okay, and you probably know what a population geneticist does. Our paper was on population genetics. We had an emeritus professor. That means he's been a long-time professor of mathematics. Then we have a geneticist in John Sanford. And then you had the dumb kid in the block, me, who has 5 science degrees. I was the least of the authors. This was a qualified team to write there. And it's probably a better paper than 99% of the evolutionary garbage that's floating around. And it is garbage. How is it that it's just, as Rebekah pointed out, it's just storytelling? I could say, oh, look, this evolved because it looks similar to that. And that's not, you know, because when you scrutinize it, and that's why I last week, Rebekah, I was trying to explain to Rebekah, okay, you have the cell, the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic cells. Yeah, they have some common parts, but try to evolve one from the other, particularly going from the prokaryote to eukaryote. There's some major barriers. So you can't take some of these examples that you cited and extrapolate that back and say this works. This is a hasty generalization, and that's terrible science. So I have to agree with Rebekah here. And so if you had any more to say about your Saturday night experience, you didn't. Since Demeter was criticizing Christianity, is he an atheist?
I don't remember if I think he said he's agnostic.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess I'll say this. I thought I crushed it, but I'm sure they didn't think so.
Oh,
But
I'm sure they didn't think so either.
The point is, what's kind of hard about all of these conversations is that, you always hit a wall where, and I guess that is the one thing that frustrates me about it, is that I feel like people who strongly believe in evolution cannot be reasonable. And they cannot see this thing that we're seeing so clearly. I don't feel like I have to be a scientist to see this absurdity clearly. There's no way for this thing to happen. We were even talking about reproduction. How we can't even, how does that happen? How does the ability to reproduce happen quickly enough so that living organism does not die out right in that lifetime? You do not have millions of years to get a cell to be able to reproduce itself. It has to have that ability from the beginning. There's no millions of years involved. It has to come with the ability to reproduce itself. How is that so hard to see that it's absurd to think that this could have evolved? So I don't know. I would say that's the main trouble. When Mike and Demeter think about that conversation, they're probably just like, oh, poor Rebekah, she doesn't understand the science. And I'm not saying I understand all the science that they understand, but it's hard because it's difficult to get through that barrier to help them see the point that we're seeing so clearly.
Yes. And if you wondered why I showed that picture of the boxers, that's kind of like, these discussions are like boxing matches. And since I saw Jesus Garcia here, and I have a feeling he likes boxing, I had to show him that picture of Oscar de La Hoya taking a punch at a villain, that villainous Ricardo Mayorga. I'm sorry. So what I'm hearing is that, Rebekah, if you saw me looking here and there, I was trying to get that picture, and I was trying to
I know, that's
message
fine.
to Jesus. So it is batting practice to be able, see Jesus. He said, yes, awesome. Mayorga got knocked out, KO'd. Sorry, it's just like when you see a bad guy finally get what he was deserving. It was just satisfying because he was a trash talking. He is so trash talking. He had it coming to him. That was a beautiful fight. So my chance to kind of bond with one of my fellow boxing fans here. So sorry about that, Rebekah.
Cool, that's fine.
I had to show that. So what ends up happening is they are, I'll give you probably the classic example. We had one of the top chemists, and you've probably heard this, in James Tour, and we had some clown named Dave Farina.
Oh yeah, I saw Dave's video, and I saw Dr. Tour's videos. Yeah.
Right. So, just imagine you're a world-class chemist, and then you have someone like Dave Farina who doesn't know a fraction criticizing a world-class chemist. And even I was like, Dave, you said some of the stupidest stuff, and I'm not even a chemist. Where did you learn? You know, and so what you've articulated is, if that'll happen between like one of the top chemists in the world who had worked for a Nobel Prize winning chemist, and many think that James Tour should also win the Nobel Prize for some of his work too. And you had just some internet clown like Dave Farina getting schooled, and he still just will not back down. I said, yeah, that's what you can expect. And so the only reason that
look at this, Andrew. Wait, I want you to see this before this comment goes too far back. Look, Andrew has apologized to you.
Oh, well, thank you, Andrew.
Look, he says, look, Sal, I like you. I was initially wrong about your peer-reviewed paper. I apologize for my misunderstanding at first.
Well, thank you. That was gracious of you, Andrew. I appreciate it. Thank you. See, Rebekah, you see, you're a peacemaker.
Cool.
Because if John Maddox were here, this would be a different story. So thank you. Oh my goodness, I got to say something to Mats. Mats, I saw Dr. Martin, and I mentioned him to you, and his family has fond memories. So it's great to see you, brother. So where were we? We were talking about kind of, it's like kind of playing, trying to debate a brick wall. But at least you have a live person, and they're not going to change their mind or whatever. But you get to practice and sharpen your arguments and the way you interact with people. And maybe that's the primary reason to spend any time in discussion with them, is so that you can actually articulate your arguments to fellow Christians, because there are a lot of people that that might be struggling with this, and it's good if you can help articulate it. And at least in the process of that, also, you might get to meet people that have certain expertise in different things. Like Emery has his expertise like in plants. I'm kind of in the protein cellular level. And then there are people that have other specialties, and you or like like in geology or whatever. And at least now with through the internet, you'll have a lot of people that if you encounter a Christian that needs help in one area, you can answer it. And so we can practice some of that. So like if people start, and we could talk about that, but so you understand then what it's like. So I wanted to ask you, do you think you're going to go back to that channel? I know it's so tempting.
Oh, sure. Did I tell you I wasn't going to go back? Did I tell you? I think I told you I wasn't going to go back after.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
Because you were like, oh, watch out for them. They're mean and they're, but
well,
you said, yeah. Okay.
Well, I think you can be, what I find is that it's only useful to practice. And really, I should be careful, because, God may call you to do things that he doesn't call me, and vice versa. So, but I'm just sharing my experience is, yeah, it's really nice that you have someone to actually talk to and interact with. And sometimes you can feel you're having I mean, it is a good feeling to be able to interact and feel that you've done well. There's something to be said that I've defended the faith well, and I understand. I've clarified in my mind how things work, and you know how the ideas connect together, and I can defend this better. And definitely for the guys, there's a lot of it. It's just like this picture again. They really do like fighting, if you haven't noticed. And I got a funny story to that effect. Have you heard of Gutsick Gibbon, Erica?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So there's this Gutsick Gibbon on the Reddit discussion boards. And I was interacting with Gutsick Gibbon, and I said, you know, I was telling my friends, I said, this dude's really different. You know, he's kind of like a girl. What is up with him? And
so you felt, just from
Reddit,
you felt that it was a girl, like it seemed like a girl.
Yeah, and I said, this is really strange, you know, because Gutsick Gibbon was always like trying to be very conciliatory and didn't like to be combative. And she wanted to be so agreeable, and like, what is it with this dude? You know, you're like a girl. And then I found out she was a girl. So that's why I'm showing. I mean, you know, there are women that like to box, but there's just something that's, I don't know.
Well, I just haven't found it to be very productive. I've had plenty of fights with people about things in the past. I mean, that's it. You know, it may seem like I'm all nice and everything, and I do try to be nice, but like, I haven't always been this way. You know, I mean, I've had plenty of fights with people, and you know, basically every time my own family gets together, we like fight about whatever topic. You know, so there's like, you know, I know how to fight, but I just have never found it to be productive, right? Like, both sides get angry, and then it's like, it does not matter what the arguments are, because if you're angry at the person, all you want to do is just punch them, and you just don't want to hear anything from them. You don't care if they're right? Like, you would, you know, you could stand you up at the gates of hell, and you would never agree that they were right, even if you knew it, because they've made you mad, right?
Yeah.
But like, so I just don't. Why would I want to make people mad? Because then they're not going to listen to me. You know, so even if I think that somebody's idea is horrible, evil, absurd, I try to just, you know, give it a fair hearing, and not, you know, go to war, because I know that's not going to help.
Well, so to that end, did you want to talk about anything else in particular about evolution? Or we could also talk about, maybe while we're here, we can talk about maybe how I might be able to contribute to either of your channels, and what shows.
Yeah, well, I'm actually quite interested in reading the paper that's been talked about here. So
why don't I show you?
Yeah, maybe and I mean, it would actually probably be best if I read it, and then maybe we could do a talk about that, you know, because I'm not going to have the background right now. Like, so, but if I read it, then I can ask you questions about it.
I'll give you the basics of it.
Okay.
And I'll let me just find what I had, and then I have to first find out where I put. I've had so many shows, I can't keep track of all the of where everything is, even though I have a nice hierarchical thing. I have so many directories now, I can't. So I'm calling it up now. I'm going to give you the basics, but first off, it's a very technical paper, But then the essential part is actually simple to understand, and it's something that should resonate with you. So, but let me just show you briefly what the heart of the paper was. And it's right here. Oh, hang on. So this was in the, we were able to get it through because it was for a math publication, not an evolutionary biology. But we were able to critique evolutionary biology with things that evolutionists themselves have said. So that's how we were able to get it through. We didn't cite creationist articles or any creationist thought. There's no Bible verses there, even though we have, I can speak for myself and John Sanford, and unless my co-authors have publicly said they're Christians, I'm not gonna speak for them, even though I do know what their religious beliefs are. So there was a ton of this where it was just all this, just tons of math, because this was for the math guys. But the fundamental thing that we were trying to communicate is, we said, what's the definition of fitness? And you'll hear this. And it's really stupid. And I can't believe that this went on for 100 years and they had the stupidest definition. Now, Dr. Dan will be on here sometimes and they'll say, that's the correct definition. And I'm just cringing. It's like, it's a useless definition. I'm not the only one. There have been people that are in the secular realm that said there's a problem with evolutionary biology in the way it defines something as adapted or fit. So, okay, so why is a bird adapted to fly? Let's just take a simple example. Well, an engineer would say it's adapted to fly because it's light enough and it can generate enough lift that it is able to go up. Very simple. Whereas evolutionary biologists define adaptation, it's like, well, it's the organism that reproduced the most. So the bird is fit because the birds that happened to fly were the ones that were reproducing the most, and therefore they're fit to fly. It's just
okay.
And what we did is, as we were reading this literature, and it's like, you got to be kidding me, because they define absolute fitness by the number of offspring associated with an individual, really more an individual trait. So, like, let's say we had this toy example where we had, let me see if I have a picture of it. And we pointed out some evolutionary biologists kind of came to that same conclusion. And I'm like, guys, there's an issue here. Let me see if I have, I don't have the, if you'll just pardon me for just a second, I need to, I really want to track this down. So, I mean, what got us into peer review there was we actually set the record. I mean, John and Bill set the record for the Journal of Mathematical Biology for the most number of downloads of any article. And John is a known creationist by like a factor of 4. I mean, tens of thousands of downloads, and some of the other articles in the journal only got, a few hundred. So, now that we're in an electronic age, people can just like say, well, we don't want to just buy the printed copy and it has lots of articles we don't read. What they can do now is they can go and pick and choose.
Right.
And when it's open access, that means people can download it for free. And so we got more downloads. They got more downloads than anyone. And then an editor approached us. So all that math that I was showing you was what was so impressive and basically got our foot in the door. And I was asked to help with the project because Bill was too busy. And I said, let me kind of piggyback off. Let me be a parasite here and just kind of piggyback or go on the coattails of people that did the real pioneering work. And I'm going to add what I think is the problem with evolutionary definition of fitness. So there was a long discussion on Dr. Dan's channel that, that's the correct way to define it, is in terms of reproductive success. And I came along and said, well, look at all the evolutionists of high rank that said it's a terrible definition. We don't know what fitness really is. And we were citing people like Lewontin, who's like one of the most senior. So let me see if I think I got what I wanted to show you. So let me just give you a little story. Why don't I'll give you the presentation I gave to Christian faculty recently.
But do please send me the whole paper. I want to read the whole paper eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this will help you. I'm glad I can at least walk you through some of this first, and I will discuss and debate this on. I will discuss and debate this on this channel and Dr. Dan's. This is my friend Walter and mine. Our book, our chapter ended up in a book that cost $1,500.
Wow.
You can get it at Walmart for $819. I just thought that was so funny.
Wow.
Like, no one in Walmart's going to buy this book. I just think they have a feed to they have a feed to a bookseller, because this normally will be on university library shelves. So that was our chapter. It was 70 pages. Now, there's this peer-reviewed article called "What's Wrong with Evolutionary Biology?" That wasn't written by a creationist. It was written by an evolutionary biologist himself. And I'm saying, oh my goodness. And we, Emery and I, do you know Emery Moyna? Emery in his image? Not yet? Okay. So he's a creationist and he's a graduate student in biology. And we were doing a reading on this. And I can give you the link on this also. This is
great.
And we were laughing. I said, so this guy's an evolutionary biologist. He did a good job of sounding like a creationist, because it was just such a devastating critique of his own field.
Wow.
And so how is it that our paper got past peer review when it's so negative on evolutionary biology? We would find papers like this that evolutionists themselves have written, and we tried to quote it fairly and try to represent the intent of the author. So of course, the standard criticism is like, oh, well, he's still an evolutionist and you misrepresented it. And they'll say, well, you're trying to say he's creationist. Like, no, but that's what they'll usually say. That's what Answers in Atheism often will come back when I quote something. I'm just like, you're totally missing the point, dude. When someone who's so convinced that evolution gives that devastating a critique, that's telling you there's something really wrong with the field. Because he's given a lot of justification, he shouldn't even believe it. And you have to ask, why does he still believe it? Because it's terrible, the state. And that's an example of the paper. And we found a lot of papers like that where they had honest admissions because they had some semblance of integrity to say this is problematic. And I'm just like, yeah, and it's taken you this long to see that. So we had a lot of that in the paper. And again, math intensive. But so William Basner, who is the co-author of this article, Journal Mathematical Biology, he got invited to be the keynote speaker in the Second International Conference on Ecology, Ecosystems, and Conservation Biology, which was great. And then that same year in 2018, John Sanford got to speak at the National Institutes of Health. That was pretty scandalous, but that was a great honor. He said that was kind of like the pinnacle of his career, that he got to make a presentation in a secular venue, and he's a known young earth creationist. And he's talking about the deteriorating genome, and we are deteriorating. The National Institutes of Health is the right venue. to tell you the truth, to tell people the truth, because they're medical researchers. They're dealing with heritable diseases. They know, they can sense it, that there's a problem of an increasing number of heritable diseases. And so they care. And it's gotten them in trouble sometimes when their own research conflicts with their evolutionary narratives.
Mm.
So that's why he got a sympathetic audience. So,
right. And what is the answer that evolutionary biologists give when you present, hey, what's going on? We're collecting mutations that are detrimental to us. We have an increase of all of these genetic diseases. So what is their response to that?
I'm going to give you some of the funny responses. First, I'll show you the quick response.
Okay.
They redefine the meaning of fitness from the ordinary. So when you say someone's physically fit, you think about what you consider healthy. So there's this book, Survival of the Sickest, and it says why a medical maverick discovers why we need disease. So they're having such a hard time finding examples of like complexity increase that are beneficial and complex, but they can find a lot of examples where something goes wrong and you end up making more babies. And they'll say, well, that's a fitness increase, because they have such a twisted view. So a lot of what they call beneficial mutations are actually loss of complexity, loss of genes or whatever. And so this is like the silliest book, Survival of the Sickest. And the author was saying Darwin was a genius because he figured out natural selection. And I'm just like, no, he wasn't. And the point is they have such a shortage of examples of complexity increased by natural selection that they have to appeal to loss of complexity to get what they call a beneficial mutation. So they cite things like sickle cell anemia.
Yeah.
They say, well, that's beneficial. Or there are examples like Dr. Dan said, okay, an elephant losing its tusks, because then the poachers don't shoot them. So the elephants without tusks don't get killed. But that's actually a loss of complexity, because you're losing an organ. And like tapeworms will lose organs because they don't need them when they're in the parasite form inside someone's gut. There are fish and crustaceans. Crabs are like crustaceans, I believe. There's a crustacean that's kind of lost its eyes. They're fish that have lost their eyes, but that's considered beneficial because it helps them make more babies. So I was trying to answer one of your questions. Now I forgot the question you had asked me, but
I said, what is their response? When you present this evidence? Yeah, okay, so their response is, look how good it is that we get sick. See? It helps us survive. Hi, Corey.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
I
Rebecca,
do have a
I should have put
channel.
that. Apologies to the viewers. I should have put a link to Rebecca's channel, Bread of Life.
Yes, Bread of Life channel. If you look up Bread of Life channel, it should be the first thing that comes up. That's my channel. Thank you, Corey.
So that's great. See if I've done no other service, I've gotten you some more subscribers.
You're doing a great service. Why are you questioning your service?
Okay.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So again, this goes back to, and you'll hear this, and that they say, oh, we have abundant examples of increase in fitness. But it's like, well, what are you citing as real examples? And it's not the same thing. So this is one thing that a lot of evolutionary biology has. They'll redefine a term that means something to the ordinary person and they quietly redefined it, they'll show that they'll make all this body of math and proof on this redefinition, and then somehow they just let it seep into the popular consciousness that we've actually solved it, but they're actually talking about something else. It's kind of a bait and switch. It's kind of fake, but it looks very convincing. So they'll say, oh, we have plenty of examples of fitness increase. And it's just like, well, it depends on your definition of fitness. If you're talking about just making more babies because they lost their organs, it's like, okay, yeah, in that sense, but it's terrible, just like survival of the sickest. So let me show you the evolutionary definition of fitness. It's actually kind of easy. I mean, we can get really formal, but I want to avoid this.
Yeah.
So this was from our paper, and we have a toy example here. Let me see if I can try to make this just a little bigger. So you could see the green rabbit, and then the red rabbit. So let me see if I can make this a little bigger. So the green rabbit on average has 2 offspring. The red rabbits have 5, and the purple rabbit has 10 offspring on average per parent. Now this is a simple toy model where every creature is female. This is not sexual reproduction. We call we call it a single locus haploid model. That's just a technical term, but I think you'll get the idea here.
Yeah.
So guess what is considered the most fit individual or class of individual? It'd be the purple, according to evolutionary theory. Doesn't matter whether he's lost complexity or not, that he's making more babies.
Doesn't matter if he can hop and do all the things that help bunnies survive. And then that's
the most kids.
And that's doesn't that kind of go contrary to what is, presented as natural selection? Like, oh, the animals that are best adapted to their environment, the bird with the best beak, or this isn't this traditionally presented as like, how animals, but you're saying now they're saying, no, it's by the reproduction, because you could have like a finch with a good beak, but yeah.
You see, they're mixing up terms. Have you heard that, this is what they call equivocation and obfuscation. It's not really a direct argument, and they're not very clear. And I think sometimes they're confused in their own mind. So let me give an example. Evolutionists have rightly observed IQs are declining. Each generation we're a little dumber. I mean, this is really tragic. I shouldn't laugh, but sometimes things are so bad you can't help but laugh. One of the reasons is natural selection. They found out, and this actually makes sense, that there are a large number of very intelligent women that don't have any kids. And there are any number of reasons for that. One, some of them just go off to school and, they end up getting their PhDs or whatever, and they're just so dedicated and they don't have kids. Another thing is there's kind of like a hierarchy. Like, this is kind of a well-established fact, and I'll give you a comical example, that women tend to want to have a mate that is maybe their equal or superior, kind of in social standing or ability or whatever. So a woman that's very accomplished, she might be attractive, but then she becomes unapproachable as she achieves. And it's really funny. I'll give you the funny example. My cousin had her PhD in civil engineering from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, really bright. And she was at a party one time and the guys were introducing themselves to her. And she said, oh yeah, I just graduated. And they said, where'd you get your bachelor's in? She said, I actually was a PhD. And she could just see the guys go, oh, nice meeting you. And just turn. They're so intimidated. And yet the reverse is not true. If a guy meets a girl that's not in the same social standing, it's not quite that doesn't quite it's different is all I could say. So and we call them dominance hierarchies, and we see dominance hierarchies all over biology, not just in human relations. So we know that very intelligent women don't have as many kids, and intelligence is often of the children is very much more influenced by the mother than the father. I don't know how that works. So if you want to have smart kids, it has to be a smart mom. and so, but they said, well, that's contributing to the decline of intelligence. So when we're talking about rabbits multiplying, it's the dumb rabbits that could be multiplying, so to speak, figuratively speaking. Instead, we're talking about humans, and then not necessarily dumb. They're just not as at the top tier of intelligence. So then it does raise interesting questions. How did intelligence of that magnitude that humans have, how did that develop if the natural inclination is toward loss of intelligence? And all of our observations of the fossil record for humans, the anthropologists, we're noticing that the cranial capacity is diminished. We've lost half of our brains, literally, in terms of just the mass of the brains. And when you think about like the books of the Bible, they said a lot of that was oral tradition. It seemed like people had not a lot of problem memorizing long passages in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, one does get that sense when we study ancient literature. It's like, how did these people, their brains seem to be able to process it. So we've also lost apparently a lot of skeletal strength and also muscles. Our ancestors were very, very much stronger, faster. They were like CrossFit athletes and more intelligent. We can tell that from analysis of the bones. So again, in absolute terms, the human population has grown, but we're sicker and we're dumber. So the definition of fitness, and what I'll show you with this, we define it with a symbol W. And we have what we call absolute fitness and relative fitness. Now, absolute fitness is just the raw number of kids that are associated with a trait. So in this case, the absolute fitness of the purple rabbit is, we would assign 10, the number 10 to it. And then there are all sorts of variations with this and stuff like they call S coefficients, but we don't need to go there. So one could see that there is an immediate problem is, well, we could say that the absolute fitness of humans is pretty good right now because we're making so many kids and we're having a population explosion relative to our ancestors that were getting killed off because the environment wasn't quite as good. We didn't have the collective technology. And I said, how useful of a definition of fitness is that if you're just counting how many offspring there are? Because a change in the environment could change the number of offspring reproduce, which means evolutionary speaking, this is a change in fitness. And that's like a nothing statement. And I'm not the only one to have made that observation. So now that I've shown you the evolutionary definition of fitness, why don't we go to the more sensible, what I call the architectural adaptation. I could use the word design, but that's kind of loaded, but the word design is actually better, but I'm going to say it's adapted because it's built a certain way. So let me see if I have an example. Architectural adaptation. Okay, so we can say a bird is fit to fly. So here's an airplane and a bird. So in terms of the construction, why is it adapted to fly? Well, we could say, well, the airplane it's just light enough and it has a source of power that helps it move through the air. And when it moves through the air, the wings create lift. So when you see an airplane taking off, it has to get enough speed. And when enough air is flowing over the wings, it'll start to create lift. And birds are more complex. The way their lifting mechanism is more complex than the airplane here, but it has a lot of the same basic features. So we could say, independent of reproductive success, we could say why something is fit to fly, why it is adapted to fly in terms of its weight and lift. Because we'd say an airplane is able to fly because it's constructed in a way that enables it to fly. And same for the bird. Now that may seem brutally obvious, but the evolutionists will say, well, the bird is fit to fly because it had more offspring, than something that didn't, and that's why it's adapted. And they'll use that same sort of like nothing logic. And what we demonstrated in our paper was, how can you make the connection by saying something's just making lots more kids, therefore it's adapted? That's nonsense. It's adapted because it's constructed in a certain way. And you and I, being creationists, will say it's adapted because God designed it so that it can operate in that environment. And there are other examples. Let me see if I have. I don't think I.
Well, and Sal, I mean, this is a great example. Like you were trying so hard to avoid using the word design. Or construction, because that requires a designer or constructor. But every nature documentary, even all they cannot, if you listen, they cannot help using words that personify nature, that nature has designed, nature has allowed, nature has done all these things that like cause nature to be an actor and and do this, have this ability that is we normally ascribe to intelligent beings. So I mean, it's for me, it's crazy when people like say they look around and they see no evidence for God. Come on, guys. Like, you don't have to be a scientist. I was looking at that bird right now on the screen and just being like, wow, that is incredible. Like this, what a mind. This is clearly a mind, and this is a mind like no mind that humans know, right? That built this incredible creature. So it seems obvious. It's terribly hard, even for evolutionists, to avoid using words like design. It's really hard. And in fact, I think in one of the evolution books I was reading, they had to have this whole section of a chapter saying, look, we have to use these words, but we don't mean it as a designer. We just mean, and so they took great care to say, look, it's impossible for us to avoid using these words. But so there's the need for the word should give you a clue about the thing that you're trying to describe. If it doesn't, something's gone wrong in your soul. I mean, open your eyes. And so that's what I'll say to Andrew. Please open your eyes. And actually, I don't even know if Andrew is an atheist. All I know is Andrew doesn't believe in evolution. I mean, he believes in he believes in evolution. But I mean, there's Christians who believe it's possible or believe in it. So I shouldn't, assume anything about Andrew. But anyway, got another example.
I'm showing another example. So this is a luxury submarine here. Someone very rich with more money than he knows what to do with. Just wanted to buy, instead of a yacht, he wanted to buy a luxury submarine. It can go underneath the wall, undersea. And then we have a whale. So the submarine and the whale are adapted because of their design. Now I will use the word design. Their design enables them to operate, to move, to operate, to be able to travel underwater. We don't have to frame its adaptation in terms of reproductive success. We can frame it in terms of the construction, the design, the architecture. That's more sensible than saying, oh, it's adapted because it made more babies. For an engineer, that's just like, that doesn't really answer the question. So I could say the whale and the submarine are adapted because they can change characteristics about their density, so they could go lower or higher in the water. They can propel themselves. So a submarine and whale would not be adapted in a desert environment. They don't have the equipment to be able to move in a desert environment. They're certainly not adapted to fly like a bird. And this is like such common sense to an engineer. And so our audience, when we were writing our paper, was addressed to engineers and say, this is the right way to define adaptation of machines to their environment. You use engineering principles. You're not going to try to just use one number and just say, oh, it's adapted because it makes the most offspring. And, evolutionary theory is so driven by reproductive success and what they call natural selection. So the one that makes the most offspring is the most fit. They've lost sight of what they're actually trying to explain, is why living creatures have the design that enables them to actually be adapted to the environment. And there are problems just because it gives them advantage after they have the organ, like the various structures you're describing. It doesn't mean that it can evolve it when it doesn't have that. How can you select for something that doesn't exist?
Right, exactly.
And of course, we talked about the mammary gland. That really was kind of gross talking about, the...
Oh, I don't mind. You know what? Mr. Jetty 89 has a good question here. Can you put it up? It's, if every species is like a sinking genetic ship, then why would God design a sinking ship? It doesn't necessarily make sense. And that's not the question. That's it's farther back, I think. But I think the answer really to that, Mr. Jetty 89, is that, like Sal said at the beginning, we believe that God, he made everything good, but that something has happened to this creation, that it has become corrupted. So, when Adam and Eve sinned, they brought corruption and death into the world. So things have been on a decline since that time. But, God's intention is to restore his creation to the original way, to that, things don't die. We don't get disease. God has promised us that he's going to wipe every tear from our eyes, that there's not going to be any more sickness or death or crying or pain. So, this experience that we're having of things being on decline, and, mutations happening and disease happening, that's not how it will always be. That's how it is right now because of what humans have done to the world. But that's not the way that, God has, through Jesus Christ, he is ushering in a kingdom where things will be restored. So I don't think God is, made us to be on a sinking ship. We poked a hole in the ship.
Changing the topic ever so slightly, but still related to your point, because we're talking about sinking ships. My pastor said, you can't stop the ship from sinking. You can give people a lifeboat. He's talking about salvation in the sense that humanity is dying. When the universe burns out, there's going to be an end one way or the other. It's just a question of when. He said you can't, the universe in its fallen condition, it is a sinking ship, but you can give people the lifeboat being Jesus Christ. And so, yeah, so I just wanted to throw that thought out there. So now you've seen kind of the general thing about what the paper is about. So I try to tell even ID people and creationists, I said, be careful when you talk about fitness. You have to find out what they really mean. Because they keep advertising these experiments that say, look at all the fitness increase, and just like, are you really increasing what needs to be solved? You know, the thing that needs to happen to solve problems of evolutionary biology. You keep claiming that you're seeing demonstrated increases of fitness when it could well be that it's just total loss of function. And we did cite a paper that reviewed all large amounts of experimental evidence. And they said, did you know that most of the beneficial, what evolutionary biologists would call beneficial mutations, for these, where there's experiments with, like, particularly microbial, like bacterial and other microbial populations, almost all of the beneficial mutations were loss of function. So it's like, yeah, so you had fitness increase, but they're not really wanting to highlight the fact it was loss of something. So, and there's a lot of complexity in biology that is actually see, they use the word maladaptive. It's just not reproductively successful. Birds are actually a good example of that. We're losing, there are many of them going extinct. And they say that's maladaptive. It's like, no, they're just not as reproductively successful. But in terms of being able to fly, they are very well adapted to fly.
Right.
And we can go over some of the incredible creatures that God has made. That's probably the thing that I'm starting to enjoy, because I'm getting tired of arguing with evolutionists. Many of them will never be convinced. But they're creationists. It's like, why don't we just go through and look at all the beautiful things and sometimes frightening things that God has made? Like the book of Job talks about Behemoth, which is a pretty frightening creature. So,
yeah, it looks like we scared off Andrew. He just said he doesn't have patience for this anymore. This is why the YouTube debate is pointless right now. Yeah, I think it's when I turned it to Jesus. But anyway, yeah, we will pray for him. Matt says, or no, Matthew says pray for him.
So,
but you're gonna send me your paper, right?
Yes. Okay. I'll actually send you both. The one on what's wrong with evolutionary biology is an easier read, and that was written by an evolutionist.
Great.
Mathematicians, really tough reads. So we've been going almost 90 minutes now. It's been fun.
Yeah.
I don't want to empty our gas tanks here, so hopefully we'll have another show. We'll have to think about a topic. I think just studying some of the incredible creatures, and I mentioned the name Dr. Martin. He loves studying God's creatures, particularly animals. And there are some incredible animals. And we could just kind of review them, because it's a way to declare the works of the Lord. And they're actually spiritual lessons. Have you ever heard of Dr. Martin? Dr. Job Martin?
So. I don't think so.
Okay. There is one very compelling creature. It's the crimson worm. There's a lot of theology in that. There's also a lot of theology in butterflies. He actually doesn't do much on butterflies, but everyone can see it. Yeah. And there even in the insect world. Well, I'll give you an example. I'll just, spoiler alert. I was one time teaching creationism to extracurricular at James Madison University. And there are these young Christian girls there. They're the only ones that attended that class that one particular day. And I said, there's a species of spider that when the male and the female get together, the female will kill the male. And I said, that's essential for new life to emerge, because the male sacrifices himself to give life, to bring life. They picked it up immediately. And some critics of evolutionary theory said, why would evolution make something so silly? And yet a creationist will say, you see, God's giving you, he's designing the world in a way to testify of him in subtle ways, like the butterfly. So there's something I wanted to tell you that you said, and it sparked something I wanted to tell you.
Okay.
Prior to Darwin, the explanation for the creatures was that it was to make man wonder, to make us wonder at the genius of our creator. That was actually, I found that statement in the PBS evolution series, because there are a lot of creatures that just don't seem to, it's like, why do they exist? And it's like, well, they're just there to show kind of the ingenuity of the creator. So I have to, I think what I'll do is I'll see if I could write myself Rube Goldberg. I'll talk about Rube Goldberg machines, and then we'll look at some animals.
Cool. That would be fun. Yeah, let's do it.
And we can cross-post it on the Bread of Life channel. And then what was the name of your other channel?
It's Examining Evolution, but I'm not really working on that now. People can go and watch the videos that are on there, but I'm taking a pause. I mean, maybe I'll start working on it again. But yeah, Examining Evolution.
I could probably contribute a little bit to there.
Yeah, that would be great.
I really want to kind of de-nerd myself a little bit in some of what I'm, because it really is not necessarily the funnest kind of YouTubes where I know I'm bored talking about certain things in organic chemistry, and I know the audience is, and it's like, after this, it's like, this was really exhausting for both sides. But talking about, I mean, you still glorify God in the process, but you don't feel that kind of uplifting feeling that you do when you just, like when you hear a beautiful piece of music and you're just, your soul is just kind of, you feel in a very worshipful mood.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rare that I've studied biochemistry and I'm in that worshipful mood afterward. My colleague Emery Moyna, he said, Sal, while you were studying biochemistry and praising God for those systems, I was praying to God that I could make it through the class. So, okay, I have an idea. So maybe I'll let you know when I'm available to work on that. And
cool.
That might be more edifying than hanging out at that other channel. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that would be wonderful. And thank you again, Doki, for your support. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Jesus Garcia says, what's Rebekah's opinion on Josh Swami Das? Well, I'm not a fan. He's my brother in Christ, but, I don't agree with his perspective on evolution. I'm glad that he's, my brother, but I don't really appreciate the way he talks about creationists, but that's my opinion. What's yours, Sal?
I haven't really thought about him in a long time. I think I'd rather not state it because it's so negative at this point. I had much higher regard for him until he started doing things that were probably going to really hurt Christians and creationists in particular in the job market. I said that crossed the line. Yeah. That wasn't good. You can have your opinions, but then trying to do things that might hurt them academically, to single them out as pseudoscientists. I said, what's up with you? You want to single out pseudoscience? Why don't you attack the idea that a human male can flip himself and make him a female? I better not. We might get the YouTube censors if I go too far down that path. But I said, why are you attacking your Christian brothers on something like this? Do you hate creationism that much? And instead, you're promoting pseudoscience of evolution, because I confronted him on several things. And like, dude, you can still believe it, but please don't represent it as science. It's garbage. And even James Tour called him out on one thing in abiogenesis. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's damaging Christians a lot. And trying to advocate to promote evolution as good science it's just false.
Yeah.
What if you're destroying people's faith with something that's untrue? I mean, someone can believe in evolution and be a Christian. I was there.
Yeah.
But if you're insisting it's good science and you end up deconverting, Jesus said, if you mislead one of these little ones, it's better a millstone be hung around your neck and you be thrown in the sea. And what he's teaching qualifies as that, in my opinion. And I will let God be the judge over what he's doing. I can contest him on scientific grounds, but it's like, where's your heart, buddy? You've not demonstrated this, and yet you're advocating it. You are advocating a faith statement and representing it as science. And it's a faith statement that is at variance with a very natural reading of the Bible. And I wanted to say, do you believe that Jesus turned water into wine? If he says yes, then I'll ask him, so why is it so hard to believe then he created man from the dust?
Yeah.
So that was a long answer. I'm sorry, Rebekah.
Yeah, no, I'm yep. I'm there with you on the frustration. But I will also say that I've realized that, our evolution believing Christian brothers and sisters may also be helping people come to know the Lord, because there are people who are so convinced that evolution is true. And for, like someone like me who says, well, evolution's not really compatible with the Bible, I don't see how it is. Well, that could turn that person away. Whereas, someone like I interviewed Dr. Cy Gart today. And, so he's a scientist who believes in evolution and he's a Christian. So someone who is, not yet a believer, but it truly believes that evolution is true, may find the Lord easier with someone like Cy Gart or Swami Das. So I just try not to judge what's happening in the spiritual realm. If everybody is, trying to follow the Lord the best they can, I think God can work through all of us. And, so I think what you're doing is really important, and I'm glad you're doing it. I'm glad, I am personally grateful, very grateful for anyone, any scientist, or even any layperson that has challenged evolution and given people answers. Because for me as a teenager, this was a huge issue. This was a thing that I wrestled with, like as I was being taught evolution in school. I'm saying, well, this story does not match up with the Bible story, and I could not reconcile them. Now, I know some Christians, they do that, and I'm not here to argue with anybody. I don't care if anybody else does that. But for me, I was like, no, these stories don't go together. Like, I just don't see how this is, how both of these can be true. And I wrestled with that for years, actually.
Wow.
And so for me, the scientists creation scientists were really important for me. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't have been a believer if it wasn't for them, because I don't know. I don't know, but I would say that was very important for me in my journey of faith, were the people like you and like the other creation scientists who were giving answers to the things presented by evolutionists.
Now, you look a little tired. I'm afraid I worn you out.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask you one last thing.
Sure.
I'm
not worn out. I'm fine.
Have you felt God answering some of your prayers? I mean, does that encourage you? The reason I'm asking that is one thing that I've found, that when people are going through doubts, a lot of them are like, well, I can't really run away from the Christian faith because I've felt God do something in my life. And is that true for you? I can say that's
absolutely.
True.
Absolutely. Like, when I'm talking about my wrestling with evolution, that was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So, I'm 44 now. So that was like when I was a teenager and early 20s. But, once I really started getting to know the Lord, I mean, now I would say my experiences with God, I've had so many experiences of answers to prayer, or just feeling close to the Lord, experiencing the presence of the Holy Spirit, and just so many things God has done in my life. Like, absolutely. Like, now it's a kind of thing, I'm in a just different place in my faith than I was back when I was wrestling with this issue.
And you see, this is the one thing, like, I just laugh at this channel called Answers in Atheism, because even an atheist, Randolph Richardson, so I call this the Richardson principle, he said there's not really any answers in atheism. I said, I really appreciate you as an atheist saying that. So when you have questions about life, there's not going to be any answers in atheism. And so all they can do is attack Christianity, because they don't have anything to give themselves. So I asked atheists, and that was really blunt of Randolph Richardson to say there are no answers in atheism. And I said, okay, yeah. So what? A lot of times, they'll act like judge and jury and say, prove to me. And they'll say, Christianity, you'll give all the arguments and they'll say, I'm not convinced, therefore it's false. I don't play that game that much. I'll tell them, I say, you convince me you have something better. What are the answers in atheism? And we can go through all sorts of things. And that's what really began to do it for me. When I nearly left the faith, I said, okay, what if I became an atheist? What's there to live for? It says, if the dead are not raised, then our labor is in vain and your faith is in vain. Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. That's from Corinthians. And that brought me back. But then since that time, I've gotten to hear all these testimonies. I've seen answered prayers. I believe I've seen miracles. And even just the last 2 weeks, a man told me that he was diagnosed with cancer and the Lord healed him.
Wow.
I wouldn't stop crying. It was so beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah. So I just had to ask you that. People will wonder why some of us are believers, and it's like, well, if the Lord's touched your life, it's hard not to be.
Exactly. I mean, now for me to deny the Lord would be like denying my own mother's existence, because, I've been journeying with him for so long now, and I always believed in God. But I mean, there was a time when I wouldn't say that I had a close relationship with God, that but, in my like early childhood and stuff, I would say I knew God was there. But you definitely you grow in your journey with God. So yeah.
All right. Well, I'll meet you backstage briefly. And do you have any closing thoughts before I shut the stream down?
Well, Patrick asked us if we can pray for Kelby. Kelby has COVID. And do you want to we could do that.
Yes,
Do you want
we'll do it
to,
up
are you
here.
comfortable with praying live, or we could pray
We'll pray.
backstage?
We'll pray live.
Okay, cool. And thank
Okay.
you, Doki. Doki also said YEC organizations receive daily emails. Their work helped convert them. And then on Reddit, almost daily, we see the testimony of faith discouraged or lost thanks to evolution. Yeah, I do think it is an issue that a lot of people wrestle with. Some people don't, some people don't think about evolution when they're thinking about faith in God. But some people, we all have different ways of thinking about things. So it does cause, uh, people to lose faith, I think. But yeah, we will pray.
I'll
Yes.
lead us in prayer.
Okay, cool.
Heavenly Father, we lift up Patrick's friend Kelby, who
Mhm.
got COVID. We ask for his speedy healing and comfort him. We need you, Lord. We live in very troubled times. We could be even in the end times. Thank you for the testimony you've left for us in creation and all the good things you've done. We lift up so many of those who are with us tonight, whatever they're going through, be in their lives, Lord. And thank you for this lovely community, the brothers and sisters that gather to hear about creation and uh, help us to declare your works and honor you, and comfort us as we meditate on what you have done. And Lord, I close the prayer and thank you that all things work for the good for those who love you. Help us to love you, Lord, and help us to trust you that all things work for the good of those who love you. We ask these things in the blessed and matchless name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sal. Thanks, everybody. God bless you guys.
Yeah, God bless you, Janet. Every time I see you, I want to pray for you especially. God bless you. You've been an incredible inspiration. And take care and good night, everyone. God bless.